Hello. Today we are going to read a book called A Deadly Mistake by Carmen Moraes. And looking at the front page or the cover of the book, we can see that it's a photograph rather than an illustration. And so that gives us a great clue that this is probably a nonfiction genre informational text. Let's keep reading and see. Oh, here is a text feature, which is a table of contents, another good clue that it is a nonfiction genre. We always read when we're reading every word on the page. So, a deadly mistake, table of contents, mistake of a lifetime, high on a mountain, one tough tree, getting permission, too big to handle. What have I done? Learning from a mistake. The mistake of a lifetime. When Donald Curry was a young man, he made a huge discovery. He also made a huge mistake. Donald was studying a type of tree called the bristlecone pine. Bristlecone pines can live for a very, very long time. Some of them are thousands of years old. Donald became famous because he discovered the world's oldest known bristlecone pine tree. In fact, it was the oldest known living thing on Earth. His big mistake was that he killed it. And here we have another text feature, a caption of the picture, Donald Curry as a young man. High on a mountain. Donald made his big mistake one summer when he was doing research in the mountains of Nevada. He was studying to be a geographer. Donald was hoping to learn about changes in the Earth's climate by studying ancient trees. One warm summer day in 1964, Donald hiked up into the mountains alone. He hiked past green grass, fields of flowers, and leafy trees. As Donald climbed higher, the mountains he was on started to change. The soft trail beneath his feet grew harder as grass gave way to rock. The sun seemed brighter because there were no more leafy trees to shade him. The wind blew harder, but Donald kept climbing. Finally, there was a very little green left. Donald was high up on the mountains. He had reached the home of the bristlecone pines. And here is another caption. These bristlecone pines grow high in the mountains of Nevada. One tough tree. The old trees stood tall. Their thick trunks twisted in many directions. Their branches had pine cones and needles instead of leaves. Donald didn't know it, but he was looking at some of the world's oldest living things. Donald spotted a very thick tree. It was as tall as a 3-story house and looked ancient. This was what he had come to find. Donald pulled out his tools. He was going to find exactly how old the tree was. And here is a picture with a caption of a bristlecone pine cone and another caption that says, a bristlecone pine can have a lot of dead wood and still be alive. To learn the tree's age, Donald needed to count the tree's rings. And to do that, he needed to see inside its trunk. Donald had a special tool for this called a boring tool. He took his boring tool and began to twist it into the trunk of the old tree. A boring tool cuts out a long, thin stick from the trunk. The stick looks a little like a pencil. Donald would count the rings on the stick to find out the age of the tree. The tree was so thick that Donald had to use the longest boring tool he had. He struggled to get the boring tool into the tree. Then the tool broke. Here is another picture, illustration this time. And we have a caption that says tree rings and how to tell a tree's age. Tree trunks grow a new layer of wood every year. Each layer makes a ring. If you look at a tree stump, you can see the tree rings. Tree experts count the rings to learn the number of years a tree has been alive. Getting permission. Donald had another boring tool in his bag, so he pulled it out and tried to twist the tool into the tree. After a struggle, that tool broke too. The trunk was too tough for Donald's tools, but he badly wanted to see the rings inside of the old tree. There was only one other way to do it. He would have to cut the tree down. Donald hiked to the forest ranger station to ask if he could cut down the tree. He and the ranger got milkshakes and sat, on the front steps and talked. And here's another caption, which is a text feature. This is the kind of boring tool Donald used to try to get a sample of the bristlecone pine. Kind of like a little drill that you hold in your hand. Donald told the ranger his story. He asked if he could cut down the old tree to count its rings. The forest ranger didn't give Donald an answer right away. First, he went to see the tree for himself. The ranger found a lot of very old-looking bristlecone pine trees on the mountain. He didn't think Donald's tree would be missed. The forest ranger gave Donald the answer he wanted. Yes, he could cut down the tree. Here's a picture of a forest ranger. And the caption says, "Today, forest rangers like this help protect trees." Too big to handle. One day in early August, Donald and a crew of men traveled up the mountain on horseback to the tree. The men used big chainsaws to cut down the thick bristlecone pine. It was hard work. Everyone helped to bring the old tree down. Donald didn't need the whole tree. He needed just a slice of the tree so that he could count the rings. But the chainsaws weren't big enough to slice all the way through the trunk in one clean cut. So the crew tied a 6-foot-long piece of the trunk to the back of the horses. The animals dragged the trunk down the mountain. There were no roads up the mountain. This is our caption. Donald and his team had to go by horse. What have I done? Back in town, the men tried other saws, but nothing was big enough to slice through the thick tree trunk. Donald and his crew had to take the tree to a railway company. It was the only business for miles around with a saw big enough to cut the tree. The railway company cut the trunk into thin slices and gave them to Donald. Back in his motel room, Donald studied the slice of the tree trunk. The tree rings were very thin and close together, so he grabbed a magnifying glass and took the slice outside. He started counting the rings in the bright sunlight. There were a lot of rings. And here is the caption for this photo. This worker is using a chainsaw to cut down a tree. Look how big that trunk is. No chainsaw could get through that. A week later, Donald was still counting. When he got to 4,844, he saw that there were still more rings to count. He realized that the tree was at least 4,900 years old. No one had ever identified a living thing that old. At first, Donald wondered if he had counted wrong. Did he count some rings twice? No. The young man couldn't believe it. Donald's tree was the oldest known living thing on Earth, and he had killed it. And our caption here says, "Counting tree rings is slow, careful work." Learning from a mistake. Donald finished studying the tree trunk, and he wrote a report about his discovery. Many people who read the report were excited to learn about the oldest living thing ever found. But some people were angry that Donald had cut down the tree. They thought he should have known the tree was so old. But how could Donald have known? Nobody can tell a tree's age just by looking at it. Some people learn only after making a mistake. Everybody learned something from Donald's mistake. Scientists learned more about bristlecone pine trees. They learned that these trees can live longer than anyone thought. as old as the pyramids. Donald's bristlecone pine tree began growing at the same time that people were building pyramids in ancient Egypt. And it's hard to see, but this is the stump of the tree that Donald cut down. Look how big that is. Donald's mistake also taught people how important it is to protect these trees. As a result, the home of the bristlecone pines in Nevada was turned into a national park. Today, it is against the law to cut the trees down. Donald Curry may have killed the oldest known bristlecone pine tree by mistake, but his mistake helped save all the other bristlecone pine trees that are still alive. The land in Nevada where bristlecone pines grow is now a national park. An ancient survivor. This is our little afternote. The bristlecone pine groves of California and Nevada contain some extremely old trees. Scientists have used core sampling to determine that one of them, nicknamed Methuselah, is more than 4,600 years old. This ancient pine lives in the White Mountains of California, but its exact location is a secret. Only the United States Forest Service knows where it grows. There are no signs leading to Methuselah and no pictures of it. The Forest Service wants this ancient bristlecone pine to live as long as it can.